Hello and welcome to ViewPoint. I'm Vladimir Solohoub. Join me now to discuss the meetings of the sidelines of the Davos Forum for Ukraine, as well as the Ukrainian government's reforms progress, is the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Ukraine, Mr. Hunder. Mr. Hunder, welcome to ViewPoint.
Hello.
Mr. Hunder, you went to the Davos Forum, you were there, you participated in various meetings. Tell us how Ukraine is perceived right now on the international arena.
Well, I think what we saw at this year's Davos compared to other Davoses in the past number of years is that, there's a lot of attention. People now really do understand that Ukraine is changing. It's understand in the past it was the perception was it was somewhere near Russia. I think now there's a clear distinction that Ukraine has its own sort of image and its brand, what it is. And the question now is all eyes were on what has happened over the last 12 months in terms of the reform process. And there was a lot of complimentary voices being sounded, saying that Ukraine has done, in terms of reforms, a number of good progress has been made. I think, understanding this was the year of laying the foundation. Because we are moving now from the macro stabilization, moving to the first signals of growth. If in 2015, still GDP was down by 10%, 2014 down by nearly 7%, we are looking at now GDP growth of at least 1%, possibly 1.5% in 2016. So I think that is now really seeing that the foundations laid in 2015, it's all eyes are on now what's going to happen in 2016.
Well, you're saying that there are a lot of compliments for Ukraine going forth with the reforms, but obviously one of the biggest change which everyone is expecting from Ukraine is to eradicate corruption. And just recently, Transparency International issued its report on the Corruption Perceptions Index,
yes,
where Ukraine gained only 1 point in comparison to the previous year, and
yes,
this index was complied based on the statements and discussions with various world institutions, foreign leaders. So isn't it the case that to the face everybody's saying and patting Ukrainian government on the back, you're doing a good job, but in fact they don't see the changes? Absolutely.
I think that is the critical and the pivotal issue now, is what we need to see in 2016 and what the major expectations are. Saying, okay, in 2015 you laid the foundation. Now we want to see in 2016 is real sort of eradication of corruption. What that means, it's finding ways of preventing corruption by paying salaries to state officials, so they don't have to look at ways of sort of augmenting their salaries and taking part in corrupt schemes. It's publicizing. It's what the journalists should do, naming and shaming these individuals that are involved in corruption. But thirdly, the most important thing is punishing. We need to see real sort of, if Ukraine is serious about its fight against corruption, we need to see people going to jail. Because, as you say, the Transparency International survey, the survey that we do, the American Chamber of Commerce, we see that 74% have not seen an improvement in the fight against corruption. That needs to be addressed. That is the #1 issue in 2016. And it's really now down to, from the very top, starting from the president all across the board. And then this is a real... they have to really now walk the walk and show that this is the most important thing for business, for society. But it's really, proving the results that Ukraine is serious about fighting corruption.
Yeah, Mr. Hunder, we will talk about the government efforts to fight the corruption a bit later, but I still have a couple of questions about the Davos summit. On Friday, there was an informal meeting, the so-called Ukrainian breakfast,
yes,
which was attended by some of the world leaders. Can you tell us about this breakfast? How did it go, and what was discussed there?
This was a very early start, 7 o'clock start, so many people had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because they were staying sort of places near Davos. It was attended by Richard Branson, George Soros, Jose Barroso. It was Chrystia Freeland, who is now Minister of Trade for Canada, and also from Ukrainian ministers Aivaras Abramovičius and Natalie Yaresko. And I think, Natalie, she is the Minister of Economy, Minister of Finance. She was the star. People really seeing that these are competent, professional individuals.
That's why she made this breaking statement about starting the negotiations group to return Crimea?
Yes. I mean, this was, one of the issues also. And I think, it's Davos is about strategy. It's looking about the big picture. The whole topic about Davos was the fourth industrial revolution. I mean, technology is changing everything, how we live, how we communicate, how we do business. And I think it's really understanding now what are the challenges, but also what are the perils of technology. With that, also looking at the big picture, 2050, we expect the population of the world to be more than 9 billion people. And the question is, how do we feed those people? And what role can Ukraine play in that? Ukraine as a massive agricultural nation, a producer, has a big role to play for that. We have to increase food supply by 70% until by 2050. So, but I think, those are the big pictures, technology, feeding healthcare. But most important, in the short term, the number one issue for Ukraine was corruption. What is Ukraine going to do in 2016 and probably the first half of 2016 in terms of fighting corruption? So there were complimentary statements made about the good job that the government has been doing, but the number one issue still for society, for business, for all walks of life is really what will be done against corruption.
But did you see, when you were talking to various world leaders both in business and politics, did you see the confidence from those people in Ukraine that Ukraine can do that, and mainly in the Ukrainian government? Because, again, going back to the Transparency International, just last year in fall, they issued a report where they directly accused the general prosecutor, Shocking, of halting the reforms. At the same time, he still stays in the office.
Yeah.
So does the international community still have faith in the Ukrainian government that it is able to go forth with the reforms and doing some drastic changes?
In the government, or many individuals in the government, yes. In terms of you mentioned the prosecutor's office, big question. Why is that is just such an important now institution in the fight against corruption. We have seen the establishment of the Anti-Corruption Bureau. We've seen the appointment of the Anti-Corruption Prosecutor. And I think that now they need to really provide tangible results. So the question is, yes, there are some individuals in the government that are doing a good job, and the perception is on an international scale that they are very professional, they're there for the right reasons. But there are individuals, like you mentioned, that there are big questions being asked. Why isn't enough or more isn't being done to fight the corruption?
Well, but this question about the prosecutor general should be asked to the president of Ukraine. It is in his competence to make the submission to the parliament for his dismissal. And this is not being done.
Well, the US ambassador has been pushing on this for the last number of months publicly. Some are criticizing him already, but I think it's really looking into the situation. This is critical. The prosecutor's office is a big issue, and it has to be addressed in the fight against corruption. And as you say, the question does go to the president. I think if we look at the big picture again. One of the books I'm reading now is The Gates to Europe. It's the history of Ukraine, a brand new book about the history of Ukraine in English. Excellent book by Harvard's professor, Serhiy Plokhy. It gives sort of a bird's eye view of 1,000 years of history. And, some of the presidencies of the recent years, they have like 1 or 2 sentences about them. And it's really now President Poroshenko has an opportunity to get into that history of Ukraine as an individual who really was serious about fighting corruption and changed the country. I mean, we are seeing this clash between the old and the new. The old Soviet system
It seems like President Poroshenko is stuck somewhere in the middle. Mr. Hunder, can we talk a little bit about your business here in Ukraine? Last time we spoke with you here in the studio, you were just recently appointed as president of the American Chamber of Commerce here in Ukraine, and you were talking that you want to promote business, you want to discuss the problems with the government. So. Now looking in perspective,
yes,
does the business here in Ukraine see the changes from the government?
Well, I've been in the job now for 9 months, and we have an ongoing dialogue. The B2G, the business to government, is the dialogue we have at the moment is one of the best we've seen probably in the last quarter of a century. Why? Because many of these individuals have come into government from a business background. They understand the needs of government. Have things changed? Yes. Would we like to see more? Yes. I think so. We're seeing the reforms.
Very, very briefly, what more would you like to see?
Number one issue, reiterating once more, it's the corruption. The fight against the corruption. That is the number one issue. That is the poison. That is the cancer that's eating away at the business, at the economy, at the whole country. I think if there's a real sort of battle against this cancer, this poison that's eradicating the whole country, I think if we see tangible results on that, for business that would be number one. And I think this government can do it. It needs the political will from the very top. And once you get that from the very top, coming all the way down through the system, we will see tangible results.
Yeah, it looks like everybody's talking about corruption. Mr. Hunder, many thanks for joining us today. As always, really nice talking to you. We were talking about the summit of the world leaders in Davos and its outcome for Ukraine and the government's attempt to fight corruption with the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Ukraine, Mr. Andy Hunder. I'm William Russell. Thank you for watching ViewPoint.